War. What is it good for? It's an ugly thing. Blood, pain, loss are inevitably bound up on both sides of any conflict in any era. But, as we know, humans are experts at making anything into a story, and fighting is, of course, no exception. The Trojan War, the 300 Spartans at Thermopylae, the Normandy landing in the Second World War, Hannibal's defeat. Our history books and entertainment alike are filled with dramatic portrayals of pivotal moments, legendary battles, epic wars, mighty heroes, and their heroic deeds. China certainly has its share of important battles in its nearly 4 millennia of recorded history. But today's story goes even farther back than that, reaching into foggy prehistory to the founding of China's legendary first dynasty, the Xia. In today's episode, Huangdi, the Yellow Emperor, faces off against the fearsome warlord Chiyou in a harrowing battle that will set the course of a nation for thousands of years to come. Join me, Jer Christie, as I explore the hidden myths that shape the world on The Mythographist, Myths of Mainland China. The Battle of Jolu. In the wilderness of Jolu, the battle lines are drawn. On the central plain, war comes swiftly. Huangdi, the Yellow Emperor, readies his soldiers, and they march from the south and west out of their villages. And from the north and east, Chiyou and his army descend to challenge the Yellow Emperor. They have swept up the coast, gathering more to their cause, and now they change direction, hoping to catch Huangdi on the barb of their hook. It is the largest war of mortals of this age, and its like has never been seen in these lands. The contest is even. Huangdi is a shrewd strategist and knows these lands well, and his warriors fight for their home. But Chiyou has weapons and strange magic, and his troops fight for the honor of their forebear, Yandi, who fell to Huangdi. With Huangdi is his advisor, a red dragon named Yinglong. Upon his back are wings, and with a word he can alter the water in the air. So, on the night before the armies meet for the first time, Huangdi says to him, "Hold back the rains so that Chiyou's troops have no relief. Let us be sure that they are dry and thirsty." And Chiyou's troops grow parched, finding no water of any kind. The dawn comes, and with it, battle cries, and a legion from each side races to the fight. Huangdi commands his troops skillfully. Chiyou churns the hearts of his men. Weapons clash, blood flows, the legions retreat, diminished. Today, there is no winner. Night falls. A small regiment of Chiyou's troops maneuvers around Huangdi's flank under the cover of darkness. Their attack is swift, and they are gone before Huangdi can retaliate. Across the battlefield, a battalion of Huangdi's men tries the same. They are seen and escape with their lives, but barely. In the dawning hours of the second day, Chiyou's men cry out. They can still find no water, for the spells of Yinglong are strong. Chiyou looks to the sky and sees the magic of a dragon at work. He raises his voice to the heavens and calls upon the spirits of Fengbo, Lord of the Winds, and Yushi, the Master of Rains. "Break open the seams of the clouds," he says. "Let them burst forth with the rain that they bear." The two spirits hear Chiyou's cry for help. They look down and see his army, weeping for water. And they oblige. The clouds split open, and the rains fall down upon both of the armies. The ground turns to mud, and Chiyou's troops rejoice. Huangdi stands in his battle tent, looking at the map. The rain beats down on the fabric roof. "We have no advantage here," he says to Yinglong. "Our forces are matched in number and strength, but the passion of Chiyou's army may overcome our skill." Yinglong sees the worry upon his emperor's brow. "The mountains may prove useful, your majesty," he says. "For though Chiyou's magic is strong, it is not so strong as the pillars of heaven." "Yes," nods Huangdi as he studies the terrain that he knows so well. "We must use the land to our benefit. We shall draw Chiyou into the mountains and into a trap, and in this way we shall find victory." So that night, Huangdi's army withdraws into the hills. Bifeng, the harbinger bird of fire, sits upon the Yellow Emperor's chariot, a portent of things to come. The army departs quietly, but there is no mistaking their trail. In the morning, Chiyou walks through the remains of their camp, and his fearsome horns glint in the new day's sunlight. He sees the remains of their fires and their chariot tracks in the mud. "They have moved into rougher terrain," he says. "If we proceed south, we may destroy their city and leave nowhere for them to run. But if we do, surely Huangdi will come at us from behind and destroy us in the act. To split the army would mean death for us all. We must pursue his army before they can set an ambush for us." And slowly, carefully, wary of a trap, Chiyou's army moves in among the mountains, mere hours behind Huangdi. Noon comes, the army rests. Chiyou surveys the lands and searches for what he might use to gain advantage. The land is not his, he cannot command it. But the wind has followed him, and he knows its ways, and so he concocts a plan. At Chiyou's incantation, a heavy fog suddenly spews forth from his mouth. It covers both his troops and those of Huangdi. It shrouds the mountains and hides the valleys. So thick is this mist that the soldiers shout for each other in the same camp, though their tents are only 5 paces from each other. "Huangdi will no longer be able to maneuver," Chiyou says. "We shall follow his army's tracks and fall upon them wherever they may be. No matter how well he knows these mountains, still he will not be able to flee from us." Because of the fog, Huangdi has halted his advance. He and his soldiers cannot see enough even to move. Before long, his troops can hear the stamp of Chiyou's feet behind them and the squeak of the wheels of his chariots at their backs. They cannot see their enemy, but they know that he is close and that his wrath is imminent. Huangdi is deeply troubled. "We cannot hope to win in such a fight as this," he tells Yinglong. "We must escape from Chiyou's army, but we cannot move because of his mists." Yinglong thinks deeply. He surveys the army, or all of it that he can see, and his eyes fall upon the Emperor's chariot. The dragon says, "Your Highness knows the road, but he cannot follow it with his eyes. If only there were a way to keep his chariot upon the road, that its eyes could see what human eyes could not." Now, Huangdi is a clever man and well versed in the workings of his own machines. He realizes that Yinglong is right. If the vehicle is true to the road, then his own eyes are unneeded. So Huangdi sets to work on his chariot, that he might give it the means with which to keep its course. The echo of the boots of Chiyou's army reaches the Yellow Emperor. Pebbles rattle down from the hillsides at their approach. Finally, Huangdi's chariot is ready, for now it faces in only one direction, and he gives the order to follow him. This is how the south-facing chariot was invented, and how it saved the army of Huangdi. His troops move swiftly now, quickly outpacing Chiyou, who is still hampered by his own mists. And when, at the end of the 3rd day of battle, darkness falls again, Huangdi has put distance between the two armies, and he consults his strategists. "My lord," says Yinglong, "still the gods Fengbo and Yu Shi travel with Chiyou. They aid his troops by sending rain and wind against us. The time is now to summon Nuba." "I do not wish to disturb her," the Yellow Emperor murmurs. "She is at peace in the heavenly realm, and men do not welcome her here." He looks at his generals. "What other recourse do we have? How can we defeat Chiyou and rid the lands of his poisonous anger?" "We need more troops," says one general with a shake of his head. "Our numbers may not differ so greatly, but Chiyou's anger possesses his men." "There remain no more troops to enlist," a second general says. "But perhaps our soldiers can be made as fierce as Chiyou himself." We must inspire them to greatness, muses a third general. How better to sturdy up the hearts of our soldiers and strike fear into the hearts of the enemy than to beat the rhythm of war on a great battle drum? Huangdi sees wisdom in these thoughts, so he goes to the craftsmen at the camp. "Masters," he says, "your emperor and your lands have need of you. You must make a drum that will bring us to victory. This drum must stir the hearts of every warrior among us. It must make our blood run hot. Also, it must terrify our enemies and send them shaking to their tents." The craftsmen bow. "My lord, this is a great honor," they say, "but a great drum indeed this must be. We long to do as you wish, but what drum can do this, save one whose skin is as strong as metal? And who could make this but the smiths in the camps of our enemy, Chiyou?" Though the Yellow Emperor is puzzled, still he knows there is a solution to every problem. He thinks upon all he knows about the lands. He hears again the words of Baiza many years ago. He imagines the myriad creatures of the wild lands, and Huangdi knows what he must do. He takes his spear, and he takes his bow, and the Yellow Emperor sets off into the mists. Over mountains and through valleys he walks, searching for his prey. The fog makes all things still. Silence covers all the world. And then he hears a crunching noise, rhythmic and heavy. Huangdi peers through the mists, and there, a strange beast hops past. It has only one leg, and its skin is like the strongest iron. It is Kuei. Huangdi stalks Kuei. Closer he gets, then he takes aim with his bow and looses an arrow. The arrow strikes the beast, and the noise of the strike echoes like a crashing cymbal through the valley. But the arrow does not so much as pierce Kuei's skin, such is the thickness of its hide, and it readies itself to flee. But Huangdi is prepared for this, and in the moment Kuei is stunned, the emperor leaps down from a cliff above it and spears Kuei through, killing it. He skins it where it falls and brings the hide back to his camp, approaching the amazed craftsmen. "Masters," he tells them, "take this most remarkable hide as strong as metal, and with it make the drum that will bring us victory." And they set to work right away. And to his servants he says, "Bring me the femur of the thunder god Lei Shan, whose sacred body we carry with us. For as he wished long ago, I again have use of his might." Through the night their fires burn. They stretch the skin and temper it. Long, thick sinews are woven around wooden rods. And in his own tent, Huangdi burns incense and whispers a prayer to the heavens. "Nuba, my daughter, return to me. Wield your dreadful powers and aid your father a final time against his mighty enemy." In the gray dawn, before the sun has risen, Chiyou is readying his troops when he hears a sound like thunder. "What is that?" he demands. "If it is the sound of the storms, have Fengbo and Yushi abandoned us? And if it is the sound of drums, which of my soldiers does so without my command?" But when his generals return to him, they have found his drums unmanned, and the spirits steady in their work. The clap of thunder comes again, and it is closer, and it echoes all around the camp. And here, is it alone? Are they echoes, or are they many drums encircling Chiyou and his army? "All my soldiers, prepare for battle," Chiyou orders, "and send word to the masters of the winds and the rains that their powers shall go with us. This day we shall overthrow the cruel and power-thirsty Huangdi and end the reign of this tyrant over all the world." The storms of the two gods swirl in fury, and gales and floods go before Chiyou's troops as they take up their swords and shields and axes and hammers and begin their march to defeat their enemy. But ahead of them, another thunderclap resounds, and it is answered by one from behind, and one from the left, and another from the right. It cannot be, thinks Chiyou. But it can only be that forces from his own homelands have joined Huangdi's army. Then the sun rises, and all of a sudden the storms of Chiyou's gods, the winds of Fengbo, and the rains of Yushi cease. The fog and mists that Chiyou himself conjured vanish, and even the muddy ground grows dry beneath their feet. Chiyou looks up in disbelief. Upon the hill above his camp, Huangdi stands, and beside him is his daughter, Nuba, the drought goddess, who has descended from the heavens to help him. Huangdi swings the giant femur bone of Lei Shan, the thunder god, and with it he beats the drum made from the hide of quay. Faster and faster, and its voice thunders across the valley, answered by more drums and more still. The sound of the drum is terrifying to its enemies, but the hearts of those soldiers who follow it beat in time with its rhythm. The spirit of Huangdi's troops swell, and they are more courageous than ever before. They descend upon Chiyou's army. They rush down the dry hillsides, they appear from the forest at the flank, and descend upon Chiyou's army. And Huangdi leads them, with Nuba following close behind. Before the day is done, Chiyou's invasion has been stopped. Blood flows like a river and fills the whole valley, but many soldiers are captured, while many more flee, escaping with their lives to return to their families far away. Chiyou himself, though mighty and ferocious as a wild bull in combat, is taken as well, and Yinglong executes him for all to see. Because of this victory, Huangdi unites all lands of the north under his rule, and for the first time there is one nation, the Middle Kingdom, and it knows peace. Those who fled back to their lands in the south gather their kin and press farther still, away from the kingdom of Huangdi, and into the jungles and mountains of the far southern coastlands, where they live even today. And what became of Huangdi's daughter, the goddess of drought, Nuba? She has come down from heaven, surely the path for her return is closed. So still she walks upon this earth, and this is why, when rain has failed to come for weeks and months, the people of a village will go out, hunting her, chasing her away, that she will cease to drive away the waters. In the intro, I mentioned that this was about China's legendary Xia dynasty, the first dynasty in China, and I mean legendary literally. Similar to the Trojan War, we don't have any actual records of what happened, just legends and stories about the battle. Huangdi is reputed to be the first leader to successfully unite the tribes of the region and form a nation, largely, at least judging by the stories, due to his success against Chiyou at the Battle of Jolu. The story of Huangdi's fight against Chiyou is probably the most epic battle in Chinese myth and legend. There are countless variations and details, but I've done my best here to stay true to the most commonly repeated and well-known events in the story, and to the spirit of the tale in general. Although the chronology and events at the end of Yandi's reign are not exactly clear, not to mention what relationship Chiyou had with him, it's commonly held that Chiyou attacked and was beaten back, which we saw in the episode about Chiyou and Quafu, then rallied his forces. Before he could attack again, Yandi, the Flame Emperor, and Huangdi, the Yellow Emperor, fought. Either Yandi was defeated or he surrendered, but either way, it seems that his troops joined Huangdi's army. Immediately after that, it seems that Chiyou attacked. Both he and Huangdi were strong and skilled and absolutely set on winning control of the land. Yinglong, the dragon, Fengbo, lord of the winds, Yushi, master of the rains, and Nuba, Huangdi's daughter and the drought demon, show up in basically every telling of this story, as does the quayskin drum. I only found mention of Lei Shan's femur late in my research, but it was such a cool detail that I had to include it. Chiyou's direction-obscuring fog is cited as the impetus for Huangdi's purported invention of either the south-facing chariot, which is a mechanical device that probably used an early differential gear. I don't know what that means, but I read about it. Or the compass. One detail that I skipped from this part, because while I did read about it, nobody I talked to had actually heard of it, was that while Huangdi struggles in the mists, Jutian Xuanyu, the goddess of warfare and sexuality and disciple of Mu, shows up to give Huangdi the tools he needs to overcome Chiyou. Interesting, but again, nobody that I actually talked to had ever heard of that. I have been able to find absolutely zero details about how Huangdi had a daughter that was a goddess or a demon, but she's always a part of the story. As we'll see in other stories as well, there seems to be a rule that if a deity directly interferes with mankind, they're unable to return to heaven. The ritual of driving Nuba away or capturing her to get rid of a drought was recorded by folklorists as an active practice less than 75 years ago. It's quite possibly still practiced today in rural communities as a method of ending drought and inviting rainfall. Finally, as we discussed in the story of Chiyou and Kwafu, Chiyou's followers who lived to tell about the Battle of Jolu are now known as the Miao, Hmong, and other people groups of Southeast Asia. They maintain Chiyou as their ancestor and have a similar legend of how they came to the south. They also venerate Chiyou as their god of war, proud of just how much trouble he gave Huangdi. Thanks for listening. This episode of The Mythographist was written, narrated, and produced by me, Jer Christie, with research by myself and Elena Tong, and music by Xiaoqing Luna Li, and music from the compilation The Essence of Famous Chinese Folk Music. If you liked this episode, stick around, because there's lots more where this came from. Subscribe to get automatically notified when The Mythographist updates, and be sure to check out the rest of the episodes on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. Finally, if there's a story that you grew up with that has shaped the way you see the world, I'd love to hear it. We all have so many stories to tell, and the more we hear, the more we'll understand each other, because we can't learn if we don't listen. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you next time on The Mythographist.